Hello! This is a new space for Front Porch Music. If you're a follower of On the Porch with Front Porch Music, our other podcast, thanks for finding us over here. This one is a little bit different of a style podcast for us. We're not necessarily interviewing artists. We are interviewing the experts who work on the other side of the music industry, though, the business side. Logan and I took these ones a little bit different. Usually you see us together hosting. This time we divided and conquered. So today, for episode number 1, I was joined by Joelle May, who is the general manager of New Motor Records. Just like the title says, WTF is sync and licensing. I know, right? Joelle is actually one of the best people to ask that question to. She's been working in sync and licensing for a number of years. She's placed music in TV shows, even video games. So if you have questions about sync, how to get your music synced, how the royalty process sort of works and the contracts work, Joelle might be the person to ask some of these questions to. Thank you so much for joining our brand new podcast, Mastered Behind the Music Business. This is our episode with Joelle May. Welcome to the first episode of the Mastered podcast. This is pretty cool.
Thanks for having me, Jenna.
Of course. Yeah, learning about your background over the last few weeks of just chatting, I was like, holy shit, you've worn many hats in the music business. And while they're all interesting, the sync hat is a goodie because I feel like lots of people have questions about sync all the time and have no idea how to get their music placed. And it's hard when you're independent, especially, I would guess, right?
Yeah, it's especially hard. Yeah.
Yeah. Why don't you give us a little intro on you? Because I know you and what you do, but not everybody else does. So give us a little intro on yourself, and then we will get to this crash course.
All right, sure. So I operate a label called New Motor Records Music. I've been in the music business for about 18 years. I started out as a publicist, an independent publicist, and I worked with a lot of indie bands, indie labels, conferences, events, helped start a few festivals, things like that. And actually, what got me into sync was when I was a publicist, I realized that, being a publicist, a lot of your job is pitching things. It's pitching artists. It's right. It's trying to get the attention of others. And I realized that the same thing basically applies to sync licensing, that you have to pitch for it. So I thought, well, if I'm pitching for things where it's costing my clients money, couldn't I also pitch for things where I make a little money back for them, And so I started getting into it that way. And that's sort of what led me to now. Basically, I helped a friend of mine who emigrated to Canada from Australia. And when she got here, we started a sync company together called Arrival Sounds, and started building a catalog of indie artists, of all the artists I'd worked with, artists she'd worked with. And we had a good roster of music supervisors as well that we'd known over the years. So we started pitching, and we've licensed a lot of music since then.
That's insane. Okay. We need to pause. What is sync licensing? For those who are like, I'm told I need to learn more about this, but I don't know what it is.
Well, licensing in general is sort of the leasing out of a product in order for somebody else to make some money on it, basically. Or hopefully, ideally, what would happen is you lease out your product and you both make money, right? But sync licensing specifically has to do with the use of music in film, television, commercials, video games, any sort of alternate media that is not promoting the song itself, where the song is being used in another capacity, basically.
And you can make a good living with the sync licensing situation.
Absolutely, you can. Yeah. It can be a really high paying thing, or it can be kind of a low paying thing too. But still, either way, you've already spent the money to make the song, you've already put the song out and everything like that. You're making hopefully a little bit of money off of streaming or royalties or whatnot. And sync licensing is a way that you can keep putting that song to work for you, to keep making money for you perpetually, hopefully, because it doesn't have to be a new song. It doesn't, it doesn't have to be a hit song. It just has to be the right fit for whatever use it's being used for.
So I don't want to get too far ahead, so I'm going to go back. Is there a difference in licensing when it comes to TV versus commercials and movie versus video game, all that stuff, or is it all pretty much the same game?
It's all, it's all relatively the same process. The difference between those would be generally in sort of the deal points. It used to be that often artists would get a back end if they licensed a song to a film, that they would get an initial fee for that, and then if the film made money, they would get a small chunk, like a very small chunk, but a chunk of the back end income. That's not as common anymore in licensing so much. So there's still the possibility of that you get that in film and television. But generally, like, a video game would be a one-time fee because it's getting printed on a piece of media that's then permanent, right? But yeah, back-end deals aren't as common, so it made sync licensing a little bit more similar across the board, but there still is the option for back-end deals depending.
Why do you have any idea about the move away from the back end deals?
I think there's been a move away from that in all aspects of film, really.
Okay.
It's it consistently, the top ones want to make more money.
Well, yeah.
you know so I think it's they've sort of gotten away from it in all, and it's also an administration nightmare.
Okay.
Because if the film gets sold from one studio to another or something like that, it's the same as like publishers and whatnot in music, that it can be a real nightmare to track down who's the publisher when something has been bought and sold several times, right?
Does that mean that sometime, or do you see that in your experience, the initial value of what a deal is going to come in at is a little higher, or no, it's about the same?
It depends. It depends on the use. Often, if it's a background use, like if it's just music playing on the radio while the film is in a driving scene, or they're in a bar and there's a band playing or something like that, and it's just background music, then generally the pay is a little lower. If it's featured, like as if it's used for a theme song, or if it's a real prominent use where, say, a band is performing and the camera is on the band performing, you're going to get more money for that.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Let's talk about independent artists who don't have publishers or labels with sync folks working for them. How does an independent artist get into that? Does it get their music heard for these opportunities, but where would they even start?
That's that's probably the hardest part of all of it, is where to start on that, because there's a lot of businesses out there that are just looking to take your money. I would recommend that no artist ever sign up with any sort of online sync agency that asks you for any money upfront. If they ask you for money upfront, it's a scam.
That feels like our general rule of
Generally.
thumb. If anybody's
Yeah.
asking you for money upfront for anything, you should maybe pause.
Yeah, there was, I don't even know if it's around anymore, but there was a business called Taxi that did sync licensing for independents, and it was sort of just a giant database of music that that music supervisors could come in and select from. But the pay is low on those sorts of things. Companies like that will take a large chunk of your earnings, and it's probably best for independent artists to seek out either a sync agent, somebody like myself, who will represent your music without taking any ownership of it, and will just take fees when we land a sync, or to get out there and start trying to meet music supervisors themselves and pitch their music directly to music supervisors.
Now, I know if I have this question, then I'm sure others do too. Where are you finding music supervisors other than at
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, that was my question when I was like, how do I start doing this?
Yeah.
And I basically, I took the approach, because I was really well integrated in the conference and award show worlds and stuff like that. I would go to Canadian Music Week, or South by Southwest or whatever, and generally those events will always have some sort of sync summit or sync meetings, one-on-one meetings that you can do with industry folks. And often those are speed meetings to meet music supervisors and whatnot. So I've done a lot of it through that. But you can also just watch the credits of a show that you like, or a movie, and wait until you see what the music supervisor is, and then Google the hell out of that person's name.
Is that what you did at some point? You have to have.
I've done that with many of them, yeah, for sure.
So the answer is
Sometimes
it's
you
not
just got to
easy.
scour the internet.
Yeah, you got to do your research too. When you represent predominantly independent music, so what do you think artists who think they have music that's good for anything in the sync realm? What would you be looking for? Like if they think it's good, what makes you think, I might be able to find an opportunity for placement on this or
Surprising. It's probably the least common type of song, but it's the most common type of sync is a happy song. you know, People write heartbreak songs, people write songs about strife in their lives and stuff, and that's often the inspiration. But often, what music supervisors are looking for in music is to convey a vibe, and often it's a positive vibe that they're looking for. So positive songs that are about feelings more than specific activities or events, songs that are about a vibe, those have a little bit more chance of getting a placement. If you're mentioning specific places or things or items or whatnot, nope. If it says Jack Daniels in the song, it probably won't get synced because then we may have to get Jack Daniels permission, right? Yeah.
that makes sense. I
Say
guess I'm thinking,
whiskey, don't say Jack Daniels, right?
yeah, okay. If we learn anything today, no, I'm just kidding. A lot of country music that gets disqualified, I'm assuming then.
Yeah, definitely.
That's funny. So, in terms of like the negotiation process, let's say an artist has come to you, you're like, I have an opportunity for this song and I can get it. What does this look like an end-to-end process?
For me as an agent, generally what will happen, I mean, I'll take my catalog and I'll pitch it to music supervisors for sure. But often what will happen is the music supervisors will send out a brief of what they're looking for. And me as an agent or, labels will also receive this and things like that. They'll give a description of what they're looking for, basically what the scene is that they're trying to place, and oftentimes they'll actually have um, sort of a placeholder song that generally is something that maybe is what they can't achieve, like a too expensive song, but it works really well, and so they'll ask for something that can you have something that sounds similar to this or is comparable to this, so you have sort of a sound that you can listen to and go, okay, do I have anything that's similar, or works with that?
Makes sense.
Sometimes they'll just come to you and ask for, I need an acoustic song, instrumental song, or something like that, right? Like sometimes they'll be more specific, but more often you can kind of, pick a couple options and say, I think these fit, give them a
Hmm.
listen, let's see.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then
I was,
hopefully it gets picked and sometimes it doesn't. It's another aspect of the industry, um, where you probably will still get a lot of no's, but that's every part of the music industry.
yeah,
It's just going around looking for the yeses.
yeah. What are you seeing is most common in the last, let's say, like 2 to 3 years? Like, what are people looking for what? Like, I can think off the top of my head, watching a couple of Netflix shows, being like, that's a nice horse song or something like that, you
Yep,
know?
yep, we did the license for that.
Nice. Okay, yeah.
um, and actually, that is probably what's pretty common these days. Oh, I have the same water bottle as you. Um, the big ass Yeti. Um, I probably shouldn't swear. Sorry.
We're good.
Um, yeah, it's okay. I lost my train of thought. Where were we on the question? Sorry.
What's common right now? Like, I'm hearing nice
Yeah,
horse and
what's
a
common right now?
show. What are they looking for right now?
I would say TV shows are probably amongst the most popular right now, because of the nature of the way that we consume media now as just people, as consumers, right? We like to binge our shows on Netflix. They're probably a little bit more common than putting out movies these days, right? Even sometimes things will be made as movies and then released as a series, right? Because they can stretch it out over a longer period of time, which also then creates more opportunities for artists to have sync opportunities in these, right? Like so I would say probably television is the most common. It's not the best paying though,
Okay.
but it's definitely a great way to get your foot in the door. I'd say the best paying out of any sync is generally a commercial. to be surprised, to be honest.
Yeah, why?
Um, I think because commercials often use more well-known music. Many of the commercial briefs that I get, they will be asking for um, something that's easily identifiable, either by the artist or by the song itself, right? And so they're willing to pay more for those. Companies spend a lot of money on commercials, and car companies or whatnot. So the syncs for commercials can be, 10,000 to 100,000, whereas the syncs for film and television are more in the like 500 to 2,000 realm.
The commercials thing is probably not the lane for your typical indie artist then, eh?
I've never placed an indie artist in a commercial, sadly.
A challenge to be accepted, maybe. But no, that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh,
If
I'm
you're
willing to take
looking,
it on.
yeah, if you're looking for well-known music and you're looking for something big and chart-topping, likely, usually, right? That
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to
Yeah.
spend a couple
Like,
of minutes. You want to go ahead?
okay. I
I
was
want
just
to
going to
spend.
say, like, it reminds me, it harkens back to, I don't know if anybody who listens to this podcast or watches this podcast will actually remember, because this will date how old I am. But when the iPod was released, the very first version of the iPod,
Yeah.
Apple synced a Rolling Stones song to that commercial, and I think the Rolling Stones were like paid $1 million or something like that for that commercial. It was one of the biggest syncs ever.
Wow. Okay, was
Yeah.
gonna say a U2 song, but that actually might have been BlackBerry that did U2.
Yeah, maybe. And it went on from there. I think it
Yeah,
was it
yeah.
was it was the Rolling Stones first, but then Apple sort of, I mean, the iPod really took off, so they spent some money advertising that thing, right?
Yeah, I'm sure it was worth it for them.
Yeah. Definitely.
What's one of like the most interesting things you've worked on, or something that you're like, huh, didn't put that on my bingo card in this area of my work?
My most fun one was probably, like, it was an independent British film that I synced several songs to, including the title credits, and ended up getting double the amount of money than was initially proposed, because they wanted that song so bad, and it was with an artist that I worked with independently for a number of years called Petunia,
Okay,
um, and his band is called Petunia and the Vipers.
cool.
Check them out. They're a great band.
Yeah, yeah, I love
Yeah,
that. Um,
yeah.
I want to spend a couple minutes on people who want to get into working in sync, but before that, um, what should an artist prepare to spend, or like what do the rates kind of look like if you can put it in ranges in terms of paying agents when they get placed? Like what should they be expecting?
Generally, it's just a percentage of the cut. That's basically it. And it could be anywhere from, I would say it probably doesn't go lower than 25% generally, depending on if you're signed up with an agent exclusively or non-exclusively.
Yep.
If you're exclusive, they're going to take less. If you're non-exclusive and they could lose that work to somebody else syncing the same song, they're going to charge you more. So up to 40%, you know.
Okay. Yep.
Some of these online companies and whatnot, like Taxi, will maybe even take up to 50% of your sync fees.
Yeah, yeah. But
Yeah,
you had
yeah.
mentioned it.
It's. I mean, it's not a small amount. It's not like booking a show and taking 10 or 15%. It's a bit
No.
higher there,
Right.
but it's a tough job. It's not an easy one to get.
No, you
Got to
spend a
make it
lot of
worthwhile for
time.
everybody.
Exactly. I was gonna say there's a lot of time that you put into it that is generating $0 until somebody says yes, right? So that makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah, exactly.
And then if that hasn't deterred you from a career in sync, what does it look like to get into the world of sync? You had a little bit of an in, you said, in terms of publicity and working in other areas of the business. So you kind of had a feel for it. What's it like for somebody who's like, do you recommend that not being your first hit at the music business? Or how do you feel that people are getting into this?
I mean, sync is the kind of aspect of the music business. It's the one aspect of it that crosses over, and it could be debated that it's not part of the music business, it's part of the film business, you know? So it's you can I think you could probably take either avenue in. I mean, more so on the film side would be the music supervision, the actual working for the film to place the music in there. But it could be argued that a sync agent is a film business person just as much as a music business person. So, I mean, those have to be probably two of the hardest businesses to really just get your foot in the door with nothing. But I would recommend that somebody do like what I said about just start Googling, just start looking for these people, forming relationships with the music supervisors. That's going to be what makes you a sync agent, is having the ability to get the music in front of these people. So if all you started doing was just looking up the sync or the music supervisor for every film you enjoyed or television show you enjoyed and started seeking out those contacts, that's a great start. Also, though, of course, you're going to have to get some clients. You're going to have to get some musicians. So I think that probably having a little bit of a foot in the door in the music business and knowing the industry a little bit better will be an advantage for sure. So maybe it wouldn't be the first job that I'd recommend somebody go after in the music industry, but I wouldn't say it's impossible.
I think people think that they're missing something and that this is more complicated than it is.
Yeah, it's not that complicated.
No.
No.
I mean, it's not an easy job, but
yeah,
the information is out there,
Yeah. It's not that complicated. And, there's lots of other opportunities too. Like, I mean, I worked with a lot of folk artists when I was an independent publicist when I first started doing this. And there's not a ton of opportunities for sync for that if it's not a rock band or a country song on a radio station or anything like that. But I've done things like I synced folk music to one of my clients to a documentary about bread. Like it was
peaceful.
Right, it was a beautiful, like lilting acoustic, instrumental kind of song, and it just sounded great against the visual of like a bread assembly line of like packaging bread and baking bread. So you can make money from anywhere. The only thing I guess you have to watch out for is if there's anything ethically that you disagree with, right? I would, if you do hire a sync agent as an artist or whatnot, it's good to give them an idea of things that you wouldn't want your music synced into, right? If you're like, I don't want my music used in an oil company's commercial, we won't pitch it, sort of thing.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Okay, is there anything that you're like, people need to know this about sync, whether it's an artist or somebody who wants to work in the space?
I think that it's, the only thing that I would say is don't give up, like it's a hard job, there's a lot of competition, as with anything in the music industry, right? There's tons of people that are trying to seek that same thing, but you never know when your sound is going to be the perfect sound for what they need, right? So just keep it up, don't give up on it. If you don't have success right away, it doesn't mean that you won't have success.
Great place to end.
That
okay.
Sounds great. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good note to leave it on. Joelle, appreciate it. Thank you for your crash course, and
no problem.
Looking forward to see what else you place over there whenever you happen to find some cool spots to get music.
Me too. I'm looking forward to that too. Thanks so much for your time, Jenna. This has really been wonderful, and good luck with everything else with the podcast.
Thank you. This is Mastered by Front Porch Music. Join Logan Miller and Jenna Weishar, the hosts of CCMA-nominated On the Porch with Front Porch Music, for this mini-series podcast offering crash courses on the ins and outs of the music industry. Expert guests from across the Canadian music landscape sit down with Jenna and Logan to discuss labels, getting your shows booked, landing festival slots, A&R, social media, and so much more. Mastered by Front Porch Music is produced by Logan Miller, Jenna Weishar, and Jason Saunders. The theme song for this podcast was written, produced, and performed by Keith Hunt.